Hello my fashion lovers, welcome to today's tutorial. On today's tutorial, I'll be teaching you how to cut and sew a tube gown with yoke or a bustier gown with yoke. Before we start, if you have not subscribed, please subscribe, click on the notification bell to be notified anytime I post a new video. Before we start, we'll start with the down parts that you're going to attach to the upper part, which is the tube with yoke or bustier. The down part, you're going to cut your fabric with the biggest part of the body, which is the hip. For the down part, you're deducting the down part from the upper part, and to get the hip point is 9, and the length of the gown is going to be 39, but we are deducting 90 from the whole measurement to get the down part. To get the waistline, measure your waist, divide it by 4 and mark it out. On the hip line, you're going to measure your hip. If your hip is 40, divide it by 4 and add your sewing allowance and mark it out. For the down part, you go ahead and connect your waist to the hip point. At the down part of this gown, at the down part, that is the hip point, whatever you have on the hip point, you measure it at the down part. But if you want to make it pencil, if you have 12 on the hip point, you can go ahead and make it 10, depending on how pencil you want it to be. On this part, whatever I have on the hip point, I'm removing 2 inches from it because I want it to have a little bit pencil. So you go ahead and cut it. I'm cutting the front and the back together. If you have any question, please ask in the comment section. I'm cutting the front and the back together. For the back, I left the zipper allowance of 1 inch for the back. The measurement for the down part is 27 plus sewing allowance. If you're going to turn it up with your lining, you're going to you mark it out where you're going to notch it. This is the allowance I'll use to turn up the down part of the skirt, down part of the lower part, which is the skirt, the down part, but it's going to be a gown. And this is the zipper allowance. The zipper allowance I left for the back part. The zipper allowance for the back. To avoid zip bulge at the back, I'll be taking ½ inch on the waist, and on the hip I'll be taking 1 inch, and I'll go ahead and connect it. To avoid zip bulge, you go in by ½ inch and make sure you add it up so that you don't so that your measurement will still be complete. And go ahead and connect it. To avoid zip bulge, you remove ½ inch, go in by ½ inch and connect it to the 1 inch on the hip line for the back part of the skirt. Go ahead and cut it off. That is the zipper allowance. Go ahead and notch it, and if you like, you can put your darts. If you like, you go ahead and put your darts if you want to have your darts. To have your darts, you're going to measure your nipple to nipple divided by 2. That will be your dart intake. Then you take ½ inch on both sides. Take ½ inch on both sides, and the length of your dart will be 2 inches above your hip line. That is the length of your dart, 2 inches above the hip line. That is the length of the dart intake. For the front and the back, they are going to be the same if you're going to impute that on it. Now we're going to the upper part, which is the tube with yoke. It's going to have a yoke, a bustier gown or a top, a bustier a tube gown with yoke, and it's going to be an off shoulder. It's going to be an off shoulder with yoke, but we're going to mark everything together. And the length we are working with is, the length of it we are working with is 17 plus 1 inch sewing allowance. That is 18 inches. And what I've marked out is the chest line, the bust, the under bust, and the waistline. That is the bust points, the under bust points, and the waistline. And I cut this fabric using the biggest part of the body, which is the bust. For the upper part, the biggest part of the body, which is the bust, plus 4 inches sewing allowance. Depending on the sewing allowance you're working with, you go ahead and impute it. That is the waist, the under bust, and the bust points. Now we're going to mark the shoulder. For the shoulder, you're going to divide the shoulder by 2. Shoulder divided by 2. You mark it out. You go ahead and take your 1 inch shoulder slope, and mark out your chest line. That is the armhole line. It's the same as the chest line. That is where your chest line is going to be. That is the chest line, or the armhole line. You go ahead and measure your nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2. You mark it out, plus your 1/2 inch sewing allowance. You mark it out, connect it down from the bust point down to the waistline. And to avoid having pointy bustier, you are going to come down by 1 inch and go up by 1 inch. And on the under bust line, you're going to take out 1.5 inch, and on this part you're taking out 1 inch. The same on the waistline. Whatever you take out on the under bust, you take it down to the waistline. You go ahead and connect it, and use your curve, or you can use your hand to connect the bust point to the dart intake. And for the neckline, you can go with any neckline of your choice, but here I'm using 5 inches for the neckline. And you connect the shoulder slope, neckline. I'm taking 5 inches for the width and 4 inches for the length. You go ahead and connect it. Depending on how deep you want the neckline to be. You go ahead and connect. Now we're going to get the middle. We're going to get the middle of the shoulder slope. Get the middle, go ahead and connect it. To the bust point. You know we went up by 1 inch. You go ahead and connect it. Then whatever you deducted, you're going to go up. I went up by 2 inches. You go ahead and impute your dart intake. Which is 2 inches. That is 1 inch on both sides. You go ahead and connect it. I went up by 2 inches for my duct intake. You go ahead and connect it. For the chest line, from the chest line, we're going to go up by 1/2 inch. We're going to go up by 1/2 inch. We're going to go up by 1/2 inch and connect. That is the neckline. We're going to connect. We're going to connect from your chest line, go up by 1/2 inch and connect to get your neckline, depending on the neckline you want to have. Here I'm getting the sweetheart neckline. Go ahead and connect it to the dart. And now you're going to take your full body measurements. Go ahead and take your full body measurements plus your sewing allowance, your bust divided by 4 plus your sewing allowance, and also put in your dart intake, because when you cut it off it's going to reduce, so you're going to add it up. If you're going to take away 2 inches, you add your 2 inches sewing allowance, then you add the darts you're going to cut off plus your sewing allowance. You go ahead and connect the armhole. Go ahead and connect the armhole. That is your tube. You go ahead and connect it. Go ahead and connect it. That is the tube. The upper part is going to serve as the yoke. The upper part is going to serve as the yoke. And for the underbust, you divide by your underbust by 4, and you take the dart intake. You're going to add it up and add your sewing allowance. The same with the waist. We deducted 2 inches. We are going to add it up again after dividing your waist by 4. After dividing your waist by 4, the dart intake you're going to cut out, make sure you add it before adding your sewing allowance. Go ahead and add it up and connect it. That is your tube with yoke. Now we are done with the marking. We're going to cut it off. We're going to cut it off. If you have any question, please ask in the comments section. But if you don't want your own to have the yoke, you can go ahead and remove it. But if you want it to have the yoke, you can go ahead and connect it with the tube top. And that is the tube. And this is the yoke. For the yoke, we are going to use another material to cut out the yoke, which will be attached to the tube top. Go ahead and cut it off. And this is the upper part. This is the tube. And this is the yoke. For the yoke, we're going to use lace to cut out the yoke. And for the back part, to cut the back part is going to be the normal back. It's going to be the normal back. You go ahead and cut, because I wouldn't want to put any yoke at the back. It's going to be the normal back. You mark out your zipper allowance. Go ahead and mark out your zipper allowance. And mark out your shoulder divided by 2. Shoulder divided by 2. Mark out your shoulder slope. Shoulder slope. Shoulder slope. After the shoulder slope, impute your chest line, armhole line. You mark out the neck. The neck width of the front and back must always be the same. For the depth, you can go with any depth you want, but the front and the back will always be the same for the width. You go ahead and connect your shoulder slope. Now we're going to, on the chest line, you're going to mark out your nipple to nipple measurement down to the waistline. Mark it down to the waistline. For the back, you don't need too much measurements, just the chest line, which will still serve as the bust line, and the waistline. That is all for the back. And now we are taking 1/2 inch on both sides for the dart intake. 1/2 inch on both sides for the dart intake. Go ahead and connect it to the chest line. And for the measurement, you're going to divide your bust measurement by 4, then add your sewing allowance. You can add 2 inches. On the waistline, divide your waist by 4, add your sewing allowance, and the dart intake, you're going to your dart intake, make sure you put it back. That is the 1 inch. Go ahead and put it and connect it, and that is all you have for the back. Connect your armhole. That is all you have for the back. But if you want the back to have the yoke, you go ahead and take it out, take out the upper part, and that will serve as the yoke. And to avoid zip bulge, we're going to go in by 1/2 inch. We're going to go in by 1/2 inch and connect it to the neckline. To avoid the back folding, you go in by 1/2 inch and connect. Make sure you add it up to the measurement to avoid shortage. You go ahead and cut it off. You notch your dart intake, and the same way you cut your fabric, that is the same way you're going to cut your lining. The same way you cut your fabric, that is the same way you're going to cut your lining. Please, if you have watched this video so far, please support my channel by subscribing. If you have any question, please ask in the comment section. I'll always be there to attend to you. And that is all we have for the back. Go ahead and notch your zip allowance. That is the back. Now we are going to go into the sewing. Since we are done with the cotton, we are going to go into the sewing of this tube gown with yoke, or bustier gown with yoke. Go ahead and cut your pad. Go ahead and cut the pad. That is the pad. That is, I'm measuring where the pad is going to. The pad I'm going to cut out, that is the shape of the pad. Is going to stop at the underbust. It's going to stop at the underbust. The shape of the padding going to stop at the underbust. That is what you're going to cut out on your wadding for the padding, and you go ahead and gum it down. For this part, you're still going to stop at the underbust. For the down parts, as you can see on the design of the down parts, there is a lace. A lace is added to it. So we're going to mark out where you want the lace to start. You're going to mark out where you want the lace to start, and you go ahead and curve it. You go ahead and curve it where the placement of the lace will start and where it's going to stop. The placement of the lace is going to start. You can start it from the hip point, or you can start it 1 inch below the hip point. You go ahead and mark it where you're going to attach the lace and also the ruffles, where you're going to attach the ruffles. Go ahead and curve it, give it a curve, a shape where you're going to place the lace, and you're going to use your ruffles to cover it up. I'm going to use your ruffles to cover it up. And this is the lace I will put there. I will place it and go ahead and cut it out. I'll cut out the shape that I marked out from the lace and place it on top of the lace and mash it down. And as you can see from the picture, the edges will drop. The edges will drop. So I advise you turn up the skirt. You turn up the skirt before placing the lace. Use your lining, turn up the skirt before placing the lace on top of the skirt, because you are going to mash it down. You go ahead, turn your skirt with the lining first before placing the lace. I'm marking out the same shape because that is what I'll cut out and place on the skirt after turning the skirt with my lining. After marking out the same shape you have on the skirt, we are going to cut it out. Go ahead and cut it out and sew it down on the skirt. Now you're going to place it, go ahead and mash it down. Go ahead and place the skirt. We're going to sew it down. We're going to sew it down. Cut out the excess. And go ahead and sew it down. And for the ruffles, when you look at the picture very well, you'll see that there is a ruffle on the skirt. That is what you're going to use to cover up the stitches. That's what you're going to use to cover up the edges of the lace, the one you're going to place. That is what you're going to use. You go ahead and for the upper part, you go ahead and put your wadding. Go ahead and attach it. Attach the tube top to your the down part. Go ahead and attach it to the down part. And this is it. This is it. You finish attaching, and the lining, you go ahead and use your lining to cover up everything. Go ahead and use your lining to cover up everything. Use the lining to turn up the down part. After attaching the upper part to the down part, that is for the front. You see how the inside is. You can go ahead and attach the lace at the down part of the skirt where you have marked. Like I told you, you have to turn it up before you attach the lace for the down part of the skirt. You go ahead and sew it down. Go ahead and sew it down. And go ahead and sew it down. Now after sewing it, you go and measure what you have there, because you're going to attach your ruffles there to cover up the edges of the lace. You measure whatever you have there. You go ahead and cut. You can cut triple of the measurement you have or double of it. You gather it and attach it. And this is what we have. You go ahead and gather it and attach it. Just sew it on top of it. Use it to cover up the edges of the skirt. And this is all we have for the front part. This is the front part. Then you go ahead and attach the yoke. Go ahead and attach the yoke. This is the yoke. You go ahead and attach the yoke before you use the lining to finish it up. Go ahead and attach the yoke. Attach the yoke only on the fabric. Attach the yoke only on the fabric. After attaching it, this is what you have for the front part, and this is the back. Use your lining to finish off the yoke. Use your lining to finish off the yoke. You go ahead and iron it. Give it a good press. Go ahead and give it a good press. And for the back, you're going to do the same. You attach the back. You go ahead and sew down your darts. Sew down your darts. Attach the upper part to the down part of the back. Attach the upper part to the down part for the back. After attaching it, you go ahead and impute your zip. Impute your zip before you go ahead and use your lining to finish off the back. Join it together for the back. Join it together. Make sure to leave your slit allowance. Go ahead and attach the zip. Mark out where your zip will stop. Go ahead and attach it. Mark out where the slit at the back is going to stop. That is the slit opening. That is the slit opening, and that is the zipper where I'm going to fix the zip. I'm done fixing the zip. The same way you joined the main fabric, that is the same way you're going to join the line in the upper part to the down part. Then go ahead and use it to turn up the back. Use it and turn. Go ahead, use the lining to turn it up. And when you finish turning, this is for the down parts. This is for the down parts. Attach your lining and sew it down. Attach your lining. Use your lining to cover it up, and sew it down. You go ahead and do the same. And for the zipper, we're going to cover up the zipper with the lining and the neckline, leaving leaving the shoulder. Do not sew down the shoulder because you're going to use it to join to the front part. You're going to use it to join to the front part. And that is the back part. This is what you have for the back. Now you're going to join the front and the back together. You're going to join the front and the back together on the shoulder. Now you're going to use the lining of the back. See how I'm doing it? You're going to use the lining of the back to finish off. Lining of the back to finish it off. Use it to finish it off. And go ahead, use your measure out what you have and shape out the gown. And this is what we have. This is what we have. If you have any question, please ask in the comment section. Please like my video and share my videos.